examples that can be taken here and there where there is a cross-pollination with the world of high art or the world of the Biennales, unless if we have illegal interventions that then are recognized as art 20, 30, 40 years later. One example I gave yesterday was Yayoi Kusama, who went with Narcissus Garden at the Venice Biennale. It was an installation. She had some spheres. They were a large installation of metal spheres. And she sold them for 50 cents, 50 American cents, was 50 lira at the time. And she was on the border, on the outer border, which was very significant. And the installation was then removed because she was selling high art for an extremely low price. And that brings also the other part, which is the economic structure of the high art world, the same for a complicated set of reasons, authorships, and etc., reject new media arts. I'm trying to understand, in a way, and here probably comes the question, if you believe that there is a push from the new media art to enter into the high art world, or if these communities are happy and will live isolated and continue to produce, and if this will remain sort of the status quo.
Well, thank you. I think it's quite helpful that you remind us that the art community is not monolithic by any means, and that the hierarchies that I was referring to are still, to a certain extent, inscribed in the art communities themselves. You still have this notion, the gallery system, the museum system, high art as art that's approved in that system and valued very highly economically. That irony and phenomenon, and by the way, I take your word for it, and I've heard other people say this, and it certainly seems to be true, that digital media art, or media art in general, has difficulty getting recognized by that high art community, and often, if not always, such artists want to be recognized by that community, so they want to get inscribed into the hierarchy, they want the prestige, they want the money, which is not surprising. The irony of that is that while this high art community continues to sell and resell, the old masters for increasingly high sums of money, its status within the larger media culture continues to not disintegrate, but simply become marginal, right? Justin Bieber, I'm sure, with the sales of Baby alone, could afford to buy, all the art at the Venice Biennale. I mean, when we think about the size of these new media communities that are not at all in dialogue with the art community, they dwarf it in many cases. Which is not, again, to say that economics is the only measure here, but rather to say that within any community, one tends to get this kind of centric view that sees the world in terms of that particular community. And for those people, it's very important whether you get into the Biennale, or you get into MoMA, or you get into the particular galleries or not. In larger cultural terms, it isn't anymore, and never, and won't be again, right? So what I'm trying to suggest is that we need to understand art practice in the context of this larger media culture, and not simply within its own, the ironies, which are also important, the ironies and inconsistencies of its own community.
I've been waiting for a while over here to your right. We're standing up waiting. I know. Thanks for the paper. I wanted to ask a question which at first appears tangential to some of the issues being debated, but I think, I hope, helps get to the root of some of the problems that breed this paranoia about ghettoization for digital media, and also fuels some of this hedonism as well, which this lady was talking about, where she's describing perfectly the conditions of post-Fordist capitalism, where there are no definitions and no boundaries. There's also no certainties, no guarantees, and human beings become collateral damage, collateral expenses in the middle of capitalism. She's also describing neoliberal politics perfectly, which many of us, I'm sure, agree is a very dangerous kind of politics. You mentioned at the beginning of your paper the term the digital media revolution, and this is a term that everybody is familiar with. And I was thinking, and have thought for a long time, that digital media, in an age where art, for example, and every other, in fact, ideological apparatus, every other dispositif, is post-medium. Every other ideological apparatus exists in a post-medium condition, including art. Art most visibly exists in a post-medium condition. These apparatus of ideological import, if you like, changes. And so I wonder whether the term digital media revolution is entirely bankrupt, because a revolution implies that ideological structures, the very patterns of belief, that drive our actions, are changed radically, that is, from their root radix. And in fact, very little, in fact, nothing has changed in the world during the time of the digital media revolution. In fact, what has consolidated has been power via economic consolidation and atomization. What I'm saying is the rich have simply got richer, and the rest of us have bought more deeply into an illusion of democracy via digital media.
So you'll have to forgive me for using the term digital media revolution, which I was using really only to evoke a popular notion of the scope of change, the scale of change that has happened with the introduction of digital and social media. We could get into a very long and interesting discussion about the political or ideological current condition and its relationship to digital media, because I think that while in one sense, what you're saying makes perfect sense, that in a sense nothing has changed, positions have only been intensified in ideological structures. In another sense, I think you can see intimations of a really interesting new kind of political phenomenon in things like Anonymous and WikiLeaks, and where you have, because of the ability, or well, not because of, at least it's made more obvious through the ability of these communicative chains to bypass traditional organizational structures. You have groups, fairly large groups, whose ideological positions are extremely weak and not at all easily identified according to the traditional political ideologies of the 20th century. I mean, Anonymous seems to be dedicated to, if anything, the proposition that information should be free, which becomes an almost meaningless proposition in current political and social terms. And they attack willy-nilly sites that seem to, in some way, stand in their way. And we see this phenomenon rising side by side on the web and in social media, rising side by side with very strongly held ideological positions. So something's going on here in the whole political rhetoric and political debate that is either magnified or in some way influenced by digital media culture. And I'd love to after the talk, perhaps, to continue that discussion with you. It's a little bit far afield because I would argue that there are, again, large communities on the, in this digital media plenitude that conduct their practice with no overt political agenda or ideology, although of course they will have ideologies built into their practices, and don't really seem to care very much one way or the other about that. So again, it's very hard to generalize. Yeah. Are we? Isn't the next event supposed to be happening in here? Yeah. Maybe we take one or two more questions and then people can talk to me outside.
So, yeah, if
No, we don't. Let's close it now. So I'm sorry for that's fine.
I'm sorry for the ones that were not able to. Oh, all right. One last question, and then it seems.
I'd be happy to talk to people after the event. I'll be here all afternoon. So.
It's just that I had my hand up from the very beginning. I think I'm in the inside row. So, Jan, I mean, I thought it was an amazing dialogue. I have a question though about the culture wars and the kind of resonance of the culture wars in the 20th century in the United States and the phenomenon that's happening right now in Europe, the Netherlands, where there's been this really focused, highly ideological attack by the state on media art and on art. And that attack is happening in some localized ways. In our city, for example, in Toronto, was really pronounced as kind of positioning art as having a kind of power, symbolic power, that is about its socialization, its politicization. And so, at the same time as you describe this kind of marginalization and kind of positioning, there's another phenomenon that's happening, within the kind of rhetorical armament of states, and these are strong states that are getting stronger, where art is in fact being re-enabled in a kind of symbolic order that I think we also need to pay attention to. And these are artists who are functioning within the art market. These are artists who are functioning within alternate communities. So how do you place that within your argument about a kind of a deep marginalization where it no longer really matters unless we kind of mobilize mass media really to position ourselves as artists?
So I don't really know much about the cultural wars going on in Europe. I obviously know a little bit about them in the United States. Are you saying that they indicate that art has been marginalized, or that the very strong reaction to it suggests that art is important?
That it's not marginal. That it maintains a kind of symbolic value, which is not only about it speaking to elites. Well, it's not just standing in for an attack on elites, because that happens, in other kinds of rhetorics. It has to do with the kind of content it carries, its political positioning, the suggestion that it has reached a certain resonance with audiences, that it's positioned on the left, etc.
Well, I think this is something we really I would love to discuss with you later, because obviously it's a very thoughtful question, requires a long answer. In the context of the United States, I would say that the culture wars are over and we lost, right? and that in fact, when art is still brought up, if the Republicans are elected in 2012, they will defund the NEA, probably completely. It will probably cease to exist. But it almost doesn't matter, because it's been under fire for so long and it's been neutered in so many ways. That I think that art, whatever attacks you get from the right on art now in the United States, are the same kinds of attacks that you get on, gay marriage or a whole set of hot-button issues that, yes, they have symbolic value, but in fact they're almost cynical at this point. They know that they can push the buttons of their own political constituency without any cost. And the reason there's no cost is that it has no constituency to support it, right? And I think that would be the condition of in the United States. Again, I can't speak for Europe, but obviously that's a very flip answer to a very serious question. I'd love to talk more.